The open field PvP meta in Rise of Kingdoms is not etched in stone. It's more like a river that is constantly flowing and changing and moving. And I know what you're thinking Omniarch, that's the most poetic thing you've ever said at the beginning of a video, and I know, but it's important for the topic of today's video because today we're going to be talking about some commanders in Rise of Kingdoms that are currently meta that you should not be investing in 2025, or at the very least you should do so with extreme caution. But before we begin, of course, what's going on, guys? Cheers. Now, as you guys know, I am a partnered creator with Rise of Kingdoms, so if you want more Rise of Kingdoms content, drop a thumbs up down below and consider subscribing. It helps out the channel a ton. The last thing I want to remind you guys is that I am actually still on vacation at the time of posting this video. I mentioned it at the end of my last video, so if there was any big news this weekend, I probably talked about it over on my community page on my YouTube channel, but there's not going to be a video about it until I get a chance when I get back, so I do apologize in advance if I miss anything big. But as you can see up here, we have our good old friend the tier maker, and we've broken this video down into 4 categories. The top category is very self-explanatory. These are commanders that you should not invest in, especially as a free-to-play player or a low spender. And just to be abundantly clear at the start of the video, all the gold key commanders, gatherers, all of those commanders go and do not invest. Okay, it should go without saying you should never use the universal commander sculpture on anything that you can get for free over time, especially because they're old and out of the meta by the time you're in Season of Conquest. So I'm not gonna go through and like stuff that top category with all the gold key commanders. No, that's common sense. That's not what we're talking about. We're covering commanders that are currently meta or meta adjacent in this video. The warning category is basically me saying that there's a high probability they're going to be power crept within the next couple of months. The caution category is similar to the warning category, but I'm less confident that they will be power crept and out of the meta. And then 50-50 is basically just a category where I could see it going either way, and I just want to elaborate further on that. Now, the first commander we're going to talk about in this video is Guan Yu. Now, here's the thing about Guan Yu. If you are an infantry main and you are running 3 infantry sets of commanders, then maybe you will be using Guan Yu at this point in time. However, I'll remind you guys that the next commander release is likely to be infantry, and Guan Yu is already not in the top 2 best commander pairs for infantry. He only finds himself there in the 3rd, and so if we get one more good infantry commander, then he may not even be in that 3rd infantry army. And so right now, at the time of me posting this video, I do not think you should be investing in Guan Yu. You probably should have stopped investing in Guan Yu many months ago, but I just wanted to make it very clear that even though some players still use him, and even though his damage factor is still solid and his silence is still powerful and overall his kit is okay, he's not worth investing in right now, but maybe that'll change. The second commander that we're going to talk about here is William. Now, here's the thing. William goes in the warning category, and here's why. William is currently being used right now as a secondary to King Arthur. That is like really the only commander pairing that I'm seeing William in right now, and that's not because he's the best pairing for King Arthur. It's just because it's a double AoE combo. It has some instant proc damage, and King Arthur does a lot of the heavy lifting. I'm not saying that the King Arthur William pairing is bad. In fact, players have sworn by it and they've gotten really good reports, but it also typically requires that you have things like the butterfly effect, inscription, and all of that sort of stuff. So with that being said, unless you are one of those Giga Chat Delta players that have legendary inscriptions and you're running that King Arthur primary, I don't think William is in the cards for most people. And even if you were doing that, you still could run Philip as the secondary to your King Arthur and still have a good time. And so even in the one commander pairing that Philip is used in, he has competition. And so I just don't see a world where players should really be investing in William right now, again, except for the fact that he is used with King Arthur, and so he doesn't land in the do not invest category, but like he barely misses them. Like he's right there. Like I can justify his usage more than I can justify Guan Yu's usage at this point in time, but like point for point, I almost feel like Guan Yu's a better commander. It's just that infantry just has so many good things right now that Guan Yu's not really in the cards right at this moment in time. The next commander we're going to talk about here is Yi Song Ye. Now Yi Song Ye actually goes in the caution category, category. And why is that? Well, I would argue that Yi Seong-Gye is definitely power crept, and he only typically finds himself in the third army of an archer mains lineup. So most players, if you're running 1 or 2 archer armies, there's a good chance YSG is not in there at all, and he is definitely not in the single best archer army. So why is he only in the caution category? Well, that is for the simple fact that you can get him before the commander swap event, and because of that I can justify investing in YSG when he first comes around, as long as you plan to commander swap him to something else once you get the chance. That's the only reason that YSG is not in the warning or do not invest category. It's because you can do so with caution, because you can actually swap him for somebody better. That's it. Don't get it twisted. This is still a third army commander for archers, and you should not be investing in him now in Season of Conquest unless you find yourself in that position running 3 archers. All right, it's time to piss some people off, so let's just go ahead and do it. All right, Gaj Armada and Cordoba, I am putting these 2 commanders in the 50-50 category, not necessarily for themselves, but merely to represent ranged combat as a whole. Okay, and I would argue that this is the single best ranged commander pairing in the game right now, and if you invest in them right now today with decent gear, you're going to get good trades. It's just open and shut case. It is what it is. The reason that they are in the 50-50 category, and the reason that, man, I keep holding off on investing in ranged for me personally, and first of all, I was holding off to see what the last range cycle would be, and those commanders actually didn't look very interesting to me. So then I thought, okay, well, am I going to invest in year-old ranged commanders? And then we saw King Arthur and Ragnar came out of nowhere, and all of a sudden I'm spending all my sculptures on them because it just dramatically improves my lineup. Not that ranged wouldn't, but then we got the King skill that kind of is a pseudo counter to ranged, but it's got a really long cooldown and it doesn't do that much. And as time has gone on, and as ranged players continue to get good reports, more and more players are investing in ranged commanders, and that makes sense. I mean, if you get good reports, of course people are going to get it. And so as time goes on, more and more people get it, and because more and more ranged armies are on the battlefield at any given time, I've also noticed the restlessness of the community has gone up more and more as well. I've seen more and more people get frustrated over ranged combat, more and more people voicing their concerns and their opinions about ranged and how much they dislike it. And then on top of all of that, I'm going to remind you guys of a face-to-face with the developers that was posted back at the end of January. Players asked, will there be more long-range units? Currently there are too many of them and it compromises the combat of rock. Players prefer to attack with long-range units and it can easily spoil the fun. And the developers responded saying, we are still preparing for the new engineering commanders, but with caution and focusing on the balance of power on the battlefield. In fact, we have been closely monitoring the battlefield performance of long-range units and have noted some of the issues and concerns raised by governors. In the future, we will continue to make adjustments to long-range units to achieve a relative balance between long-range and melee units on the battlefield. So with the developers closely watching the performance of ranged right now, and with my finger on the pulse of the community, just getting that vibe check of more and more people getting frustrated with ranged. And I mean, this even comes up, I'm in KVK now and I'm in voice calls, and there's just constantly people complaining about ranged combat, right? And we have ranged players in our kingdom, right? But like, just because it's meta doesn't mean it's fun. And so those two things combined with the fact that the most recent ranged release was good, but it wasn't, I mean, it wasn't like power crept or anything like the Gaj Armada Cordoba release. Because of that, I am 50-50 on investing in ranged right now, right? And again, I'm using these 2 commanders as sort of placeholders for just the whole category of range. It could go either way, right? The next range release could come out and it would be just as good or better than the Gonzalo Gaj Armada combo, and then boom, there you go, ranged is cemented forever. It's not going anywhere. But I can also see a world where the other commander troop types are slowly power crept more and more and more, and the ranged commanders are not as much power crept, and thus the ability to get great reports diminishes slowly over time. So hopefully you guys understand why these commanders are in the 50-50 category. It's not because I hate ranged or anything. I just, looking at multiple data points, it just feels like maybe it's a little risky to go into ranged right now. And I feel like honestly there's a lot riding on the next range release and what the developers say about ranged between now and then. Okay, now that we've got something in every category, let's go ahead and add some more commanders to the list. The next commander that I want to talk about here is Gorgo. Now here's the thing about Gorgo. When she first came out with Liu Che, a lot of players used Liu Che and Gorgo in the open field and got great reports, and it's no wonder. But at this point, I don't think that she is really a commander that you need to be using in the open field, and it's not because she can't perform well still, it's just because there's better options, right? You're either going to be running William Wallace with Liu Che, or Liu Che with Philip, or Liu Che with Alex. I've even seen people run Scipio Emilianus in the open field just because the single target hit is so crazy, right? Even though he gets no stats or anything. I just don't think Gorgo is a commander you should be investing in right now as a infantry player, also because again we are around the corner from another infantry release in the next couple of weeks, and honestly from a garrison perspective I doubt that Gorgo is going to go anywhere, but at the same time, like from an open field perspective, she's not worth investing in. Okay, so don't get it twisted, this video is about open field PvP, it's not about rally garrison meta, so don't look at this and say, oh, Omniarch's so stupid, she's garrison meta, why is he putting her here? I know that, and I do expect, I mean, if the next infantry garrison is also smite damage, other troop types might have a problem cracking that garrison. Okay, so we'll have to wait and see, but for open field PvP I think it's pretty self-explanatory. Don't invest in Gorgo right now. Next up, let's talk about Ashurbanipal. Ashurbanipal is going to go in the warning category. I think right now he is used quite a bit in the open field, but if you look at his kit, he's really not built for that, right? It just so happens that he has a decent open field performance because of his great AoE. He's got the skill tree, he's got the RNG stats on the expertise, but really he's not, it's not a perfect fit, right? It's just the fact that his damage factors crept a little bit, he's got a little bit of march speed, he has like just enough on his kit to make him good in the open field. And so once again we find ourselves in a scenario where it's not that he performs bad in the open field right now, it's just that he's not doing anything special in the open field. And so one open field AoE archer commander later and he's instantly power crept to the graveyard, right? So, and it doesn't even have to be an open field, you know, archer commander, it could literally just be another rally commander from archers does the same thing but better and he goes right to the graveyard. So again, it's a huge warning. He is good, I know that a lot of players like him, so he's not in the do not invest category yet, but just like William, he's like right hanging on the edge. Next, let's talk about Belisarius Prime. Now Belisarius Prime has always been a pretty contentious cavalry release because cav players were expecting something insane and they got something relatively niche. Now that's not to say that Belisarius Prime doesn't have his uses. He obviously is great for swarming things down, and as a matter of fact the amount of players that I see swarming a flag with Huo Arthur drives me insane, because first of all, if you're swarming a flag you're probably a whale, and if you're a whale swarming something down with Huo Arthur, that means that you have no idea how your commanders work. Like just a quick PSA to save your hospitals, you guys, Arthur has 0 stats when he's hitting a garrison, and his bonus to skill damage or combo damage is cut by 1/3, and he doesn't have his rage debuff. Like literally all of his skills require that he be hitting a field troop. Okay, so stop hitting garrisons with Arthur, you're crazy. And also Huo's entire 4th skill doesn't work. Okay, Huo gets no skill damage, no defense, none of that when you're hitting a garrison. Okay, so please stop filling your own hospital by swarming down a flagger fort with Huo Arthur. It's like, it's actually embarrassing. Like when I see it I'm laughing in the Discord call. But anyway, that's what Belisarius Prime is for. Okay, for those of you doing silly stuff like that, you should be using this dude. All right, in case you guys were wondering like what's going on there, you forgot about Belisarius Prime. That's what his job is. Okay, go ahead and get that guy instead. But the point is, really, with the release of Subutai and with King Arthur, we see cavs going in a combo damage direction, or at least that is what we're kind of expecting, right? And if that is the case, then we have really no room in our lineups for a super niche commander like Belisarius Prime, because he's all skill damage, he has a bonus to skill damage, he's got the mobility tree so he can't even be primary. Like there's so much working against Belisarius Prime right now, and yes, he does have that role of swarming down garrisons, but besides that, like even if you're using him in your 3-army lineup right now, you might not be for very long, because again, the more combo commanders we get, he's going to be like the first one to go out of your lineup if he's even there at this point at all, which most players he's not. So that's my cautionary tale for Belisarius Prime. Honestly, he probably should be in warning or do not invest, but at the end of the day, like his stat spread is okay and he is good for swarming things down, so I'm putting him in caution. He could really go either way here, but things are not looking great. Honestly, I'm gonna do it. I'm putting him in warning. I'm sorry, I'm putting him in warning. It just seems very unlikely that there's a world where he's more used than less used moving forward from this point in time. All right, who haven't we pissed off in a minute? Let's go ahead and piss off infantry infantry again here. William Wallace, throwing him right in warning. Now here's the thing about William Wallace, just like other commanders in the warning category, you can use him today, get great reports, right? That's not the point of this video. The point of this video is to let you guys know that there's a high probability that you will not be using William Wallace after the next infantry release. Why is that? Well, if the next infantry release is a smite commander, then you're going to pair that with Liu Che, and then that is your single best infantry march. And then you ask yourself, okay, well, Omniarch, what about a 2 infantry lineup? Wouldn't that new smite commander be good with William Wallace, and then you run your Liu Che with Alex or Philip like you always have? And the answer is yes, but is that new commander going to be so good with William Wallace that it's better than Ragnar Scipio? That's really hard, because Ragnar Scipio is a double AoE. There's tons of stats, so much skill damage, so much synergy. It's actually such an insane pairing. I love it so much. And William Wallace already is entering at a disadvantage with no AoE, right? So like that other commander would have to scale so good with William Wallace that it outperforms a double AoE combo like Ragnar Scipio, and I just don't see that being the case, right? I really don't. I see it more likely that you would actually run the new whatever the next commander is with Ragnar or Scipio than you would with William Wallace, even if it's a smite damage commander and there's a lack of synergy there. Just the fact that it could be double AoE just might be so much better than the William Wallace pairing. That's what I'm thinking. So is it possible that William Wallace has a resurgence in the future? Absolutely, right? Absolutely. But right now I'm feeling a little bit on the fence here. Next up, let's go ahead and put Shajar here in 50-50. And this is, she's in a weird spot, right? Because it seems like, you know, we got smite for infantry and we got combo for cavs and we got true damage for archers, right? And the community at large seems to not like the true damage mighty healing gimmick that we got with Shajar. And it kind of works for Choi Young because he's a garrison and like that's a different ball game, but people just didn't really seem to like it for Shajar, right? People don't really love the healing mechanic in Rise of Kingdoms. They feel like it fills their hospital too much, and to an extent that's true. And so I'm 50-50 on Shajar, not because she can't be used right now, but because I don't know if the developers are going to continue down a path that is pretty like unpopular, right? Like I literally never, you can tell me in the comments below, I've never heard a player say, oh my god, I love the true damage mighty healing mechanic, it's so good, right? I've only heard people sort of justify it in hindsight or make it work and be proud that they've made it work, but I've never heard someone just like flat out love it, right? Like it's just better that's the case, right? And in fact, most of the time you see Shajar in the field, she's a primary because it deals skill damage, right? So I'm 50-50 because, you know, I can see a world where the developers say, you know what, we missed the mark on the first one, let's release an entirely new gimmick for archers, or just put them back to skill damage AoE and that's it. Or I can also see a world where the devs say, hey, we missed the mark with Shajar, the next one's going to be even stronger and you'll see why. And then, you know, Shajar has a great pairing and she might be secondary there and it's going to pop off, right? So I'm really 50-50 here. This is, again, I have sort of, it's a vibe check, just like with ranged. I just don't know, you know, I'm getting weird vibes about the mechanics on these commanders, and I'm not confident that the developers are going to continue down a path that seems to be less popular, right? I mean, like at the end of the day, it's a business and they're going to release what the players want, right? And the more vocal they are, and the more, you know, the more commanders that people are spinning the wheel for and swiping their credit card. If you're the developers and you're seeing that, you know, Shajar's release made 50% as much money as the William Wallace release, right? Then it's like, okay, well, clearly something's wrong there, right? And so, I mean, that's how, if I were a developer and I was part of the company, that's what I would be doing. I'd be like, oh, we can literally just measure our success in dollars almost, right? Not to say that you should always do that, and not to say that that's the only way, but like, let's be real, it is a business, right? So that's kind of how I'm feeling about Shajar right now. I'm gonna go ahead and throw Alexander the Great in the caution category for the exact same reason as Yi Seong-Ye. He is a commander that you absolutely should invest in KVK2, but just know that after that you could just safely switch him out for somebody else during the commander swap event and you don't have to worry about it. My advice, you probably want to swap him for Philip because they fill basically the same role, but Philip is universal and many would argue he performs better. Next up, let's talk about Huo. This might be a bit confusing for some people. Huo goes in the caution category, and the reason for that is because if you look at his kit, he is mainly a single target damage nuke with a slightly faster rage engine depending on the circumstances of the battle, and that's kind of it. He has a ton of stats, right? Decent march speed, hits like a truck, but he only hits one unit. There's no crazy debuffs there, there's nothing crazy going on, and so his kit is relatively vanilla, right? And so it actually wouldn't take that much for Huo to be power crept out of the meta, which sounds a little bit crazy because right now most players are swearing by Huo Arthur, myself included, right, being the single best cavalry pair. But you know, I can imagine a world where we get another cavalry commander that has a 3000 damage factor and it's skill damage, and you just throw Joan behind them, and then you run Arthur Philip or you run Arthur William or whatever, and then all of a sudden you're just Huo's not in the 2-army lineup, right? You know, he'll probably be in the 3-army lineup, but will he be in the 2-army lineup? That's the real question, right? So for that reason, I'm a little cautious on Huo right now. I think that he's in a better position than obviously the other two commanders in the caution, but that's only because he's just much stronger individually. So that's kind of my thoughts and opinions there. I know that might be a little bit unpopular, but I just, this video is not, I'm not trying to be popular with this video. I'm trying to just like give you the cold hard facts. I've been watching the Rise of Kingdoms meta change for 6 years. Like, it's literally my job, and so I think about this stuff every day, all the time, for years. And so I just feel like my gut is telling me that, like, again, it just would not take that much to power creep Huo. That's really it. All right, let's go ahead and actually put my money where my mouth is here, and we're gonna go ahead and do something crazy right here. Okay, so let me just explain. I feel like, actually, let's do this. Let's do that. I think that's more fair. I feel like with Ragnar, he finds himself in a similar boat as Huo. Now, point for point, I would argue Ragnar is just a better commander than Huo, straight up. Like, he just, it's AoE, damage factor's insane, like his stats are great. I mean, there's so much to love about Ragnar, but at the same time, he suffers from the same problem as Huo, in that if we just get another AoE commander for infantry that's just slightly stronger, then right away there is nothing unique about Ragnar that will keep him in the meta. You could argue that he's got the drain effect, which is fine, but like, it's not like massive attack and march speed debuffs have been like the best meta debuff in the game. Like, there's other meta debuffs, there's better debuffs in the game. There just are, right? Even though it's a drain, even though it's unique, it's not unique enough to make him a must-have staple forever, right? Whereas if we look at, like, for example, Guan Yu, he's a great example. His run from like 2020 to 2024, he had a 4-year run in the meta, which is insane, right? Like, there's so few commanders that have a run like that, and like, we have to ask ourselves, well, why is that? Well, he was already pretty power crept, and he also had his silence, which was like that was great in itself, and he had the skill tree, and there was just perfect synergy with him and lots of other commanders in the meta. And you know, in the same way, Ragnar kind of fills Guan's shoes strictly because he hits harder, but he's missing that uniqueness of the silence, right? And so, you know, when you compare those two commanders, do I see Ragnar having a similar 4-year run as Guan Yu? Honestly, I don't, right? Because all we need, like I said, is just one more AoE infantry, and then boom, we're done. Now, the reason that I was hesitant with CPO Prime is that he obviously does not hit as hard as Ragnar Prime. However, he's a little bit faster in terms of march speed. He has a better stat distribution, I would say. That's a little debatable. I know there's like a crazy amount of defense on our boy Ragnar Prime, but we've got some health at least on the CPO Prime, and his 30% AoE health reduction is very good, very unique, and he deals a little bit of instant proc damage. It's nothing crazy, right? There's a little bit of shielding there going on for your allies. Again, nothing crazy, but at least he has that debuff on the active skill that makes him unique and sets him apart. And you may prefer to use CPO Prime over Ragnar Prime in some scenarios. It just depends on who the next commander releases, right? So I'm 50-50 on CPO. He's been in the game for a while, he's been in the meta for a while, and so I'm getting a little bit cautious about that. But by the same token, at least he's got something unique there that Ragnar does not have. Ragnar is pure vanilla damage for the most part, and that is the easiest thing to power creep in Rise of Kingdoms. Okay, I think I have sufficiently pissed off infantry players enough. A lot of the best infantry commanders in the game are on this list already, so let's just finish this off with pissing off some cav players. All right, yeah, Yeah, I know. Listen, here's the thing. All right, here's how I'm looking at Cavs right now. Okay, right now I'm using Nevsky right now. I'm using him. So let me be very clear. Nevsky's good. He's strong. He gets good reports. I'm not debating that fact. That's not, if you're gonna comment that, you're missing the point of the video. How many times do I have to say this in the video? It's not whether or not they're good right now. It's whether or not they're good in a year. That's what we're talking about in this video. Okay, fundamentally. So with that being said, okay, because that's how long it takes free to play players to get a commander, by the way. All right, it takes them a real long time, and so if they invest in Nevsky today, they're probably going to be screwed. All right, that's just the truth. And why is that the truth? Well, the truth is that first of all, Cavs are probably going down the combo route, so skill damage commanders are already they're already on the fence, right? Second of all, he has no AoE. Third of all, his skill damage factor is lower than others in his category. It's worse than Huo, straight up. It just is. And a single target debuff these days is never been less valuable. Now, it's not to say that the 45% defense reduction that you can get from Nevsky's active skill, it's not that that's bad, it's still good, but like, again, in the world of debuffs, when we have commanders like Herman Prime that spread a debuff AoE, and we have debuffs like on CPO Prime that are AoE, and we have debuffs on commanders like Zhuge Liang that are AoE, right? So in a world where we have pretty good AoE debuffs, a single target debuff on one commander, like that's not enough to keep them in the meta these days. That's just how good some of the newer commanders are, right? And so, okay, so if we look down a year from now, and let's say the next Cav release is combo, and that's your King Arthur pair, right? Then, okay, well, your second Cav pair is going to be Huo Joan, right? I mean, like, what are we talking about, right? Like, I mean, you could still use Nevsky Joan, sure, no problem, right? But I feel like most players would be better off with the Huo Joan, personally, right? I just feel like point for point, that's better. Okay, let's say the next Cav release isn't combo damage. Let's say it's skill damage, okay? Well, it's probably gonna have as much skill damage as Huo or more, which immediately puts Nevsky in the dirt, straight up. I mean, assuming the rest of the kit is comparable, like, that's it. Let's assume that, okay, maybe it's not single target, maybe it's AoE, maybe we get another AoE skill damage commander. Okay, well, in that case, we might be running King Arthur with Philip or King Arthur with William, and then that new AoE commander in Joan, right? Like, there's just so many outcomes where Nevsky is at the bottom of the totem pole, unfortunately, right? Unfortunately. And again, luckily for Nevsky, he was so good when he came out that he's still good today, right? Luckily for him. And so for players that invested in him when he came out, amazing. You've gotten many years of good use out of Nevsky, myself included, still using him today, right? But my point is, if we want to stay ahead of the meta, and especially as a free-to-play player or a low spender or whatever, or as a new player even, you don't want to be investing in commanders that, you know, there's a high probability that they get power crept out of the game. So that's how I'm feeling today. If you have 690 legendary commander sculptures and you're looking to invest in a cavalry commander, I would say probably don't go for Nevsky right now. And the final commander we're going to put on the list here, just to really drive home the Cav hate, okay? And just to be clear, right, like if we look at this list, most of it is Cavs and infantry, and those are the two troop types that I use the most. Okay, so you cannot accuse me of hating these troop types, because those are the ones that I use the most. I only run a single archer march, right? That's my least used march. It is what it is. All right, so I love Cavs and I love infantry, but again, let's paint a picture where the next Cav release has an AoE cavalry commander that is skill damage. That would take the spot of Joan behind Huo, right? It would be Huo and whoever that new commander is, and then you might run the Arthur with Philip or Arthur with William, like you always have. Now, to be fair, there's a reason that Joan is the last one we're talking about here, because she is the one that I was the most hesitant to put on this list, because I actually do think Joan is very good, and she's actually, like, I've always thought that Joan was more valuable to a lineup than Nevsky, and I know that most players wouldn't agree with that, but for the longest time I've thought Joan was arguably the best cavalry commander in the game, and she shines, but I feel like the spotlight always goes on the primaries, right? But the truth is, like, she puts out a ton of skill damage, and every other skill shot is double the damage, right? It's crazy, and she's supportive. But the thing is, like, as we start to see the damage factor of some of the newer commanders like Ragnar Prime, like Liu Che, like King Arthur, like these commanders have crazy AoE skill damage potential, and she has a 3 target 2000, right? Same thing as CPO Prime, and he finds himself on this list. So it wouldn't take much to put Joan out of the business, right? Like, that's just the truth. And on top of that, her stats are not that good, right? They really are. Like, her third skill barely does anything, her expertise barely does anything, and her second skill gives her a small amount of cav attack and she has 10% cav health. Like really her stats are very power crept at this point. So for those reasons I'm putting her in the 50-50, but you know, her active skill is just so good that I'm very hesitant to put her here. But those are my 2 cents on Joan right now. And I do think that it's actually kind of funny that there aren't more archer commanders on this list, and it's not because you shouldn't invest in them. It's because a lot of the archer commanders are actually so far out of the meta right now that people aren't investing in them anyway, right? Like Zhuge Liang Herman is safe, but like nobody today is investing in Boudica Prime. She's not even part of the conversation. Henry's not part of the conversation. Like who else? No one's using Artemisia. No one's talking about Artemisia, right? Unfortunately, besides me. Nebu's so old. I mean, he's been power crept by Ashurbanipal, and I actually like Nebu, but like, I mean, do I really have to make a video telling you guys not to invest in Nebu in 2025? Like, I mean, Cyrus, really? Like, these are not like, you could make the argument that like, yeah, I'm playing favorites here for archers, but like the truth is that it's actually the opposite. Archers are actually so bad that no one's even talking about like any of these commanders anymore. Like they're not even up for debate. It's just everyone knows not to invest in them. So I just wanted to clear the air on that one. But anyway, guys, this video has been a bit longer than I thought it would be, and I just wanted to give you a quick summary of my thoughts and opinions on these commanders, many of which are currently meta, but I just want to throw out a little bit of caution to you guys, let you know like, hey, careful with some of these investments. Like you might not want to invest in them right now, because either in the case of infantry, we're right around the corner from another release, or in the case of cavalry, there's some things about each commander's kit that like aren't that special, and they could easily be power crept as well. So on top of the fact that combo seems to be the direction, and a lot of these are skill damage. So anyway, with that being said, guys, if you made it to the end of the video, make sure you drop a thumbs up on it. Helps out the channel a ton. It helps get this video out into the YouTube algorithm so other Rise of Kingdoms players might see it. And while you're down there, consider subscribing to the channel and clicking the bell to be notified the next time I upload a Rise of Kingdoms video. And let me know in the comment section below if there's any other commanders that belong on this list. Are there any other commanders that you should be cautious about or not investing in that aren't obvious, right? Like obviously don't be throwing gold sculptures into Elcid, okay, obviously. But any other commanders that you think are currently meta right now that you really feel players should be cautious about investing in, let me know in the comment section below. And am I completely wrong about some of these? Like, do you think some of these commanders are so good that they're going to stay in the meta for 2-3 years? Let me know in the comment section below. And with that being said, guys, thank you so much for watching. This has been Omniarch. I will talk to you guys again soon. Peace.